Continuing to examine some of the world's busiest routes, let's take a look at the busiest city pair in the Canadian air travel market for today's video. For such a large and expansive country, it might come as a surprise to some that Canada's busiest route is just 275 nautical miles and takes around an hour of flight time. Nonetheless, multiple airlines compete on this city pair, collectively offering nearly 40 flights per day between Montreal and Toronto. Let's look at this market, who's offering flights, and which aircraft travellers can expect to fly on. Yes, the amount of flights between Toronto and Montreal is astounding. It's of course not Los Angeles and New York, but it's still impressive given the types of aircraft you'll see on such a relatively short route. However, considering that Toronto is the largest city in the country and Montreal is the second largest, it makes a lot of sense. Further justifying strong air connectivity is the fact that Toronto Pearson and Montreal Pierre-Elliott Trudeau Airport are major hubs for Air Canada. The Star Alliance carrier is thus able to shuttle customers between the two airports for long-haul intercontinental services, perhaps similar to how Air France-KLM makes use of Amsterdam Schiphol and Paris Charles de Gaulle. Even without transfer activity, there is a lot of point-to-point traffic between the two cities. This is made clear with the amount of ground-based transportation options available. By road, the journey can take between 5 and 8 hours depending on traffic. Depart at a busy time of year and a busy time of the day, and it's not so pleasant using the busiest highway in North America. Coach bus services operate regularly throughout the day. For example, Megabus appears to offer 15 services daily, even departing every 30 minutes at some points. There's also rail service 5 to 6 times per day, but again, this service is primarily geared to point-to-point business travel between the city centres. And so, which airlines fly this route? Well, at the infrequent end of things is WestJet. Looking at Flight Radar 24 schedule data, the airline is currently offering just one flight per day between the cities, using either a 737-700 or Dash 800. It wasn't always this way, and the airline was better positioned to compete with Air Canada on this route. However, a few years ago, the airline decided to exit or reduce its presence in several markets in East and Atlantic Canada. Living up to its name, WestJet, it instead chose to focus on offering more flights out of Western Canada. At one point, the airline had even suspended service completely between Montreal and Toronto, and only resumed this city pair recently. Commenting at the time on WestJet's decision to exit this market completely, John Gradek, a former executive at Air Canada and lecturer at McGill University, told the media, "So they're trading off Montreal and Toronto to fly for longer-haul Canadian flights. They're using the assets that were in Montreal and Toronto now to fly other long-haul markets and focusing in on non-stop services to and from Calgary." As per a Montreal Gazette article from 2023, WestJet flies 80% fewer trips between Canada's two biggest cities than it did in 2019. The next airline offering service between Toronto and Montreal is Porter Airlines, which has a codeshare with Montreal-based leisure airline Air Transat. This carrier operates up to 12 flights per day, 8 from Toronto City Billy Bishop Airport and another 4 from Pearson International. Flights from both Toronto area airports head to Montreal Trudeau. From Toronto City Billy Bishop Airport, Porter deploys the de Havilland Dash 8400, configured with 78 seats. From Toronto Pearson, Porter uses the Embraer E195-E2. While these new next-generation highly efficient regional jets can fly to any city in North America, Porter uses these 132 seats for extra capacity on the short Toronto-Montreal sector. Porter's presence at Pearson also supports several codeshare agreements struck with other carriers, such as the aforementioned Air Transat, as well as Alaska, Delta, Qatar Airways, and more. And finally, there's national juggernaut Air Canada operating around 26 flights daily. Like Porter, Air Canada serves Montreal Trudeau Airport from both Toronto Pearson and Toronto City airports. From Toronto City or Billy Bishop, the airline uses the de Havilland Canada-8400 up to 8 times daily. It's a far more diverse situation with the airline's operations out of Pearson, as it uses the following narrow-body aircraft types for its numerous flights: the Airbus A220-300, the Boeing 737 MAX 8, as well as the A320 family consisting of the A319, A320 and A321. Less often seen are the Bombardier, now technically Mitsubishi CRJ900, and the Embraer E175. For wide bodies, Air Canada keeps things diverse as well, deploying jets like the A330-300, 787-8 and 787-9. The 777-300ER is even deployed on occasion. While the capacity might be needed, some of these larger wide bodies only appear in the schedule when they need to be repositioned from the one Air Canada hub to the other. One last point of interest regarding aircraft types is that from time to time Air Canada deploys its all-business class Airbus A320s between the two cities. Technically flying as the airline's private charter brand Air Canada jets, the airline will sometimes deploy these 70-seat aircraft on regular services when they aren't being used for charter operations. These all-premium A320s also feature a section where 4 seats face each other with a table in the middle, ideal for business meetings or card games. As we noted earlier in this video, the multiple hub strategy justifies the number of seats and frequencies between Toronto and Montreal for Air Canada. For example, Air Canada serves Casablanca, Morocco from Montreal. Thus, should a Toronto resident wish to book with the airline, it should be easy to find a connecting flight and transfer in Montreal. It's the same for a Montreal resident wishing to head to Santiago, Chile. Air Canada only serves the South American destination from Toronto, and so a connection should be easy at Pearson Airport. So that's everything there is to know about the busy Canadian corridor that is Toronto-Montreal. While it's Canada's second largest airline, WestJet barely has a presence in this market, while Porter does its best to compete with Air Canada. As for the nation's largest airline, it would appear that Air Canada deploys almost all of its aircraft types on this route for various reasons. Aircraft leave on a nearly hourly basis, sometimes more and sometimes less. Ultimately, if you need to get between these two Canadian cities, you shouldn't have any trouble finding a flight and available seat. And so, have you ever flown between Montreal and Toronto? Let us know which airline and aircraft type by leaving a comment down below. Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.